Go ahead, Ava, my mother said, smiling as she slid a gold pen across the table. Sign it. 36 relatives sat around the private dining room staring at me, while a laminated poster leaned beside the birthday cake. Invoice, cost of RAISING AVA Mercer, total due, $289,432.16. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. At first, people laughed. Then Mom started reading it line by line. Diapers, $18,000. Private tutoring, $11,000. Therapy after her little teenage breakdown. She glanced up at everyone. That one was expensive. The room got quieter. I sat frozen in my chair, while cousins lowered their phones from recording and pretended not to look at me. Mom kept going anyway. Emotional stress caused to mother. She tapped the paper. Honestly, this should have been higher. A few people chuckled nervously. Then she said, some investments never pay off. That killed the laughter completely. I looked around the room. Nobody defended me, not one person. Because Denise Mercer paid half their bills. She helped one uncle open his auto shop, covered another cousin's rent after his divorce, loaned money to 2 aunts. In this family, if my mother spoke, people usually agreed. And tonight, she wanted an audience. She lifted her wine glass toward me. 27 years old and still ungrateful. Your younger cousins are married, buying homes, starting families. And what do I have to show for all my sacrifice? I finally managed to speak. Is this supposed to be funny? Her smile disappeared. No, it's accountability. The restaurant suddenly felt too hot. My hands shook under the tablecloth while the framed invoice stared back at me beside my untouched birthday cake. Near the end of the table, Grandma looked sick to her stomach, but she stayed silent. Mom pushed the gold pen closer. You've been costing this family money since the day you were born. My chest tightened. 3 years. That photo had stayed buried in my phone for 3 years because I knew exactly what would happen if anyone saw it. But when I looked up and saw 2 cousins recording me again, while my mother stood there humiliating me like entertainment, something finally snapped. So while she kept talking, I unlocked my phone beneath the table, scrolled, opened the image, and sent it to the entire family group chat. Immediately, phones started buzzing around the room. Mom stopped mid-sentence. My Aunt Karen checked her screen first. The color drained from her face. What is this? She whispered. Across the table, another cousin grabbed his phone, then another. The room shifted so fast, it almost felt physical. My mother noticed. And for the first time all night, her smile vanished. Aunt Karen looked up from her phone slowly, like she was afraid to meet my mother's eyes. Denise, she said carefully, why does this say transferred to personal account? Mom moved instantly. Give me that. She snatched for the phone, but Karen pulled back hard enough that several people at the table noticed. The whispers started immediately. I pushed my chair back before anyone could stop me and walked out of the private dining room. My legs felt unsteady as I crossed the hallway toward the bathrooms. Behind me, chairs scraped against the floor. Ava, wait. Rachel caught up to me near the sink area. She was my oldest cousin on Mom's side and one of the few people who still talked to me regularly. What did you send them? She asked quietly. I stared at myself in the mirror. My mascara was starting to smear under my eyes. A screenshot. That part I figured out. I swallowed hard. I didn't think I'd ever use it. Rachel folded her arms. Use it for what? For a second, I almost told her everything. About Dad dying when I was 14. About Mom changing afterward. How every conversation became transactional. Every mistake became leverage. Every achievement became something she took credit for. Instead, I leaned against the counter and said, do you remember when Grandma almost lost the house? Rachel frowned. Mom said you drained Grandma's retirement account. Yeah, I said softly. That's what she told everybody. Rachel's expression shifted. Over the years, Mom had borrowed money from almost everyone in the family for Grandma's care. Hospital bills, medication, emergency repairs. I'd covered 2 mortgage payments myself after Mom called me crying at 2 in the morning. And every single time, she made me promise not to tell anyone. Family dignity matters, she always said. Rachel looked down at her phone again. I loaned her money last month. That didn't surprise me. I rubbed my hands together nervously. If I say everything before she does, nobody's going to believe me. From inside the dining room, voices started rising. Rachel glanced toward the door. Something happening. When we walked back in, the atmosphere had completely changed. Nobody was eating anymore. Several relatives were staring directly at Mom, while she moved around the table, demanding people unlock their phones. Delete it, she snapped at one cousin. Right now. Grandma sat stiffly in her chair, clutching her napkin tightly. Then she looked at Mom and asked quietly, "Why would Ava still have that?" The entire room went silent. My stomach dropped. Grandma recognized the screenshot immediately. Mom noticed it too. "Don't start," she warned sharply. Grandma opened her mouth again, but Mom cut her off hard enough that even the waitstaff near the doorway stopped moving. "You have no idea what you're talking about." The room froze. Then Mom slowly turned toward me. Her voice went cold. "If you think one screenshot changes anything," she said, "you're all about to learn what Ava really did." Mom didn't sit back down. She stayed standing at the head of the table, like she was reclaiming control of a courtroom. "You all want context," she said. "Fine." Nobody interrupted her. Not yet. She walked to her purse, pulled out a thick manila folder, and dropped it onto the table beside the birthday cake. "I didn't want to do this tonight," she continued dramatically, but Ava forced my hand. Rachel looked at me uneasily, while Mom started removing printed bank statements. "3 years ago," Mom said, holding the papers high enough for everyone to see, $82,000 disappeared from Grandma's retirement account. A few relatives gasped. Mom pointed directly at me. And Ava had access. The room exploded into overlapping voices. "What?" "She stole from Grandma." "Are these real?" One uncle immediately stood up. "Ava, tell me this isn't true." Mom pressed forward before I could answer. "She was nearly cut off from this family over it," she said. "That invoice, it was supposed to be an intervention. Maybe public accountability would finally make her admit what she did." I watched people shifting away from me again. Not everyone, but enough. The relatives who depended on Mom financially looked especially eager to believe her. I could practically see them calculating what disagreeing with her might cost. One cousin picked his phone back up and started recording again. "Ava," my uncle demanded louder, "answer him." But I wasn't looking at him. I was looking at the papers in Mom's hands. The same papers she'd shown people privately for years. Carefully selected pages. Never the full timeline. I finally spoke. "Why did the transfers continue after I moved out of state?" The room stopped cold. Mom blinked once. Nobody said anything. I kept my eyes on her. "I moved to Seattle in March," I said quietly. "The transfers in your paperwork continue until August. So how exactly was I withdrawing money in California while living 1,500 miles away?" Grandma slowly turned toward Mom. Mom recovered fast. "She's twisting dates," she snapped. "You know how manipulative she can be." But the confidence in her voice cracked just slightly. At the other end of the table, Rachel zoomed in on the screenshot I'd sent earlier. Her eyes widened. "Wait," she whispered. She turned her phone toward Aunt Karen. Karen's face changed instantly. Then she showed someone else. Nobody spoke out loud, but the information started spreading around the table anyway, person to person, screen to screen. Mom noticed, and panic flickered across her face for the first time. "What are you all looking at?" she demanded. Grandma pushed herself slowly to her feet. Her voice shook. "Denise," she said, staring at the papers in Mom's hands. "Tell them whose signature that actually is." The room erupted all at once. "No way. Hold on. Let me see that." Mom slammed the papers down onto the table. "She's confused," she said immediately. "Everybody calm down. Mom's been overwhelmed lately." "I am not confused," Grandma replied. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through every conversation in the room. Nobody sat down. Nobody touched their food. Grandma steadied herself against the table and looked directly at the relatives surrounding her. "I never gave Denise permission to control that account alone." Mom laughed sharply. "Are we seriously doing this here?" Rachel stepped closer to Grandma. "Then whose signature is on the transfer forms?" Mom's jaw tightened. Around the room, phones were coming back out, not to record me anymore, but to compare screenshots inside the family group chat. One uncle frowned at his screen. "These dates match the times Denise asked me for emergency money." Another aunt looked up suddenly. "Wait, she asked me too." I watched realization move across faces one after another. Mom had told every person a slightly different story. Different emergencies. Different amounts. Same timing. Rachel turned her phone toward the center of the table. "The screenshot Ava sent includes transaction metadata," she said. "Look at the timestamps." My mother's face lost color. I finally spoke again. "She transferred money from Grandma's retirement account," I said quietly, then called me asking for help paying Grandma's medical bills. Nobody interrupted me now. I sent her money because I thought Grandma needed it. An uncle grabbed one of Mom's printed statements and compared it against the screenshot. "Oh my God," he muttered. Another relative looked furious. "You borrowed from me that same week." Grandma's hands trembled. "When Ava questioned the missing money," she said softly, "Denise told me the family would fall apart if people found out." The room went dead silent. I stared at the floor for a second before answering. That's why I stayed quiet. Several people looked at me sharply. I took a breath. Grandma begged me not to expose her. She thought if Denise got cut off, she'd lose everyone. Mom suddenly lunged for Grandma's purse hanging off the chair. "We're leaving," she snapped. "Right now." Rachel stepped directly in front of the doorway. "No," she said. That single word changed everything. One by one, relatives started confronting Mom openly. "You lied to us. You used Grandma. How long has this been happening?" My phone buzzed nonstop against the table. Canceled payment apps. Missed calls. Texts from relatives apologizing. Then Grandma said the one thing that finally shattered whatever authority Mom still had left. She tried convincing me to rewrite my will last month. Several people cursed it under their breath. Mom looked around the room wildly, like she was searching for someone, anyone, still on her side. Nobody moved. Finally, her eyes locked onto mine. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You just destroyed this family." I woke up the next morning to 117 unread messages. For a second, I forgot where I was. Then I saw the framed birthday invoice leaning against my apartment wall, where I'd thrown it after getting home at 2 in the morning. My phone buzzed again. Family group, chat, 36 members, had turned into 3 separate chats overnight. One was relatives, comparing screenshots of transactions. Another was people demanding repayment details from Mom. The third didn't include her at all. I scrolled silently through the messages. I cut off the shared account. She asked me for 10 grand last Christmas. Did anybody else notice? She always called during emergencies. Then Rachel sent a single message that pinned everything together. She reposted the photo I'd sent during dinner. The screenshot Mom failed to notice contained transaction metadata in the corner. Timestamp transfers from Grandma's retirement account. Transfers sent into Mom's personal checking account. And below them, messages from Mom asking me for money for Grandma's emergency treatment. The dates overlapped perfectly. Worse for her, the transfers continued for months after I'd moved to Seattle. She couldn't blame me anymore without blaming geography itself. The entire story she'd built over 3 years collapsed overnight. Mom had accused me of stealing from Grandma before anyone could investigate where the money actually went. And because she controlled the family financially, most people accepted it without asking questions. My phone rang. "Grandma." I answered immediately. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then I heard her crying. Not dramatic crying, quiet crying, the kind people do when they finally stop holding something in. "You should have told them," she whispered. "You asked me not to." "I know." That hurt more than yelling would have. In the background, I could hear dishes clinking softly in her kitchen. "I thought I was protecting everyone," she said. "I didn't realize who I was protecting." By noon, the fallout had become impossible to ignore. One cousin removed Mom as trustee from a jointly owned property account. An uncle publicly demanded repayment for a business loan. Another aunt canceled a family vacation Mom had organized and posted. "I'm not funding manipulation anymore." Screenshots kept surfacing. Mom asking different relatives for private emergency loans. Mom claiming Grandma needed procedures that never happened. Mom telling completely different stories, depending on who she wanted money from. The authority she'd built for years disappeared in less than 12 hours because it had never really been authority. It was leverage. And once people stopped fearing her financially, they started seeing her clearly. That afternoon, Grandma met with a lawyer to revoke the power of attorney paperwork Mom pressured her into signing. Rachel texted me afterward. "She's done." But the message that stayed with me came from Uncle Darren. I'd barely spoken to him in 2 years after he sided with Mom during the theft accusations. He sent only one line. "How long were you carrying this alone?" I stared at the screen for a long time before locking my phone. That night, Mom left me a voicemail. I almost deleted it without listening. Almost. Her voice sounded nothing like it had at the restaurant. No confidence, no performance. Just rage. "You turned everyone against your own mother," she hissed. "After everything I sacrificed for you." I let the message finish. Then I deleted it. No response. The following weekend, I went to Grandma's house. No private dining room, no speeches, no audience. Just the two of us sitting on her back porch eating grocery store birthday cake, while the afternoon sun faded across the yard. At one point, she disappeared inside and came back carrying a small box. Inside was my father's watch. "He would have wanted you to stop carrying everyone else's shame," she said. I couldn't speak for a minute after that. Because for years, I honestly believed staying silent kept the family together. But sitting there beside Grandma, I finally understood the truth. Silence hadn't protected the family. It had protected the person breaking it apart. And in the end, the invoice my mother handed me cost $289,000. The truth cost her everything.